our world is built, our food world is built around foods engineered to be hyper palatable, to be so tasty that we can't say no. What's the Lay's potato chip tagline? Bet you can't eat just one, because they know it. Like they'll win that bet all day long. And so this is some of the stuff where you, instead of bemoaning the fact that like these really tasty foods are challenging, they are. So you need a strategy for how to deal with that.
Hey guys, don't forget to check out the Street Cop Training Conference, April 23rd through the 28th, 2023 at the Gaylord Opryland Resort and Convention Center. It's going to be a great experience. 5 career-changing days, some of the most profound speakers in the industry. Guest speakers include Rob O'Neill, the guy who killed Bin Laden, Kyle Carpenter, the youngest living Congressional Medal of Honor winner, Fox News host Tommy Lahren, Navy SEAL American war hero Jason Redman, Sheriff David Clark, Sheriff Mark Lamb, and Sheriff Wayne Ivey. You'll also spend time with all of our Street Cop instructors at this event Monday through Friday. We'll have a great lineup of courses in addition to our great speakers. It will be a week that you will not forget. You'll be thankful you came. You don't want to miss out. Check out streetcop.com on how to register. If you're going to use the room code, make sure you book it from Sunday through Friday. That's what the code's good for, and it's about half the price of the regular rate. But those rooms are running out, so make sure you sign up now. We'll see you there.
111, 110.
You training to be a street cop?
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Street Cop Training Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Street Cop Training. My name is Dennis Benino, and I have with me today Robb Wolf. Robb is Jesus Christ, a lot of things, so I'll just let him explain what he is. Robb, I appreciate you being here today. I know that you're a busy guy. You're on a lot of streamlined and significant podcasts, so we're pumped to have you. And maybe the best thing you do is just give us the rundown of who the fuck you are.
Man, I don't even know at this point. I'm old enough that the CRS, the can't remember shit, is setting in. But I was a research biochemist by training, got into this line of work of, I guess, the health space because I almost died. I developed ulcerative colitis at the age of about 26, 27. So badly that I'm 5'9", 165, 170 pounds right now. At the low ebb of my ulcerative colitis, I was about 125, 130 pounds. So not a big dude. And if you imagine 30 pounds less of me, like I was in pretty dire straits. But in figuring out what I needed to do to fix that ulcerative colitis is what got me down this path of like ancestral health, the paleo diet, ketogenic diets. And so this is the area I've been working in for the last 23 years. I've written a couple of New York Times bestselling books. I co-founded the first and fourth CrossFit affiliate gyms in the world. Did about 6 to 8 years of work with Naval Special Warfare in their resiliency program, basically the pre and post deployment rotations that the SEALs and the special boat team members would go through. I'd speak at those events. And so I've done a fair amount of work within the police, military, and fire scene. I've never served, unfortunately, but definitely have a very large spot in my heart for folks in those areas. And I'm married to an Italian wife, have two daughters, 8 and 10, and I muddle along and old do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And that's kind of the last 30 years of my life in a rambling overview.
You see, you're an old dude. How old are you?
51 here in a couple of weeks.
See, this is the point. When you take care of yourself, what you look like at 51 is fucking berserk.
I remember my dad at 50 and he seemed old. He seemed legit old, but he smoked his whole life. He drank, he didn't. I had many, many more advantages than what my dad had. So I agree. And it's remarkable what I noticed it a little bit at the 10-year high school reunion. It was kind of like, oh, the die is kind of cast. But by 20 years, I was like, oh my God, it was like speciation event. It was like completely, there were a couple of people that really worked out and ate pretty well and they looked pretty much the same. And then there were other people that I'd look at the name tag and look at them and I'm like, man, I kind of see the semblance, but yeah, it's remarkable.
We just had this conversation. There's a girl who works in my office. She's one of my really dear childhood friends, and I love her. She's a wonderful employee. So she sent me a picture of 2 people that we went to high school with, and she's 3 years younger than me. And I honestly can't believe what they look like. And I'm not here trying to cast judgment. I don't know what they've been through mentally, what caused whatever it is. but it's flabbergasting. And outside of any kind of catastrophic event, I'll take my chances on living a little bit more conscientious of my health. Believe me, I wish I was more disciplined. We'll get into that today. I'm trying to make it about me because I'm into this space. I like health, fitness, scientific data, nutrition. To me, it's very exciting, but I'm also a piece of shit with food at times. Must admit that. But I just wanted to say something. It's interesting. Not too long ago, I'm at a family event, and my uncle, who's 72, I said to my wife, I said, look at my Uncle Dick. And like, he looks amazing at 72. How do you think he did it? She said, he doesn't drink. And I'm sure you can figure out why. For 30 years, he hasn't had alcohol. And he did enough damage, as crazy as it sounds, in his early life to his body that he is unable to, I guess, process certain foods. So he can't have sugars. He can't have a lot of carbohydrates. This man looks like he's 58 years old. He's 72, fit as he looks, and he's a handsome guy, tall, 6 foot, 6'1", lean, like, and she said to me, I'll never forget it. She goes, and that's what you're going to look like at 72 if you actually take care of yourself and do the right thing. I said, could you imagine? Right? Nobody's going to do it, but he was forced to. He doesn't want to. He has no choice. He has to live his life that way because he can't process the food. He's got, but even with his internal damage that he caused to himself, still looks fucking great at 70, better than anybody in my family by eons.
That's awesome. My wife's dad, when we met almost 20 years ago, he had been a logger his whole life, and hard life, hard work, not good food, super disordered sleep and all that stuff. But he had just sold his business, had a little bit of money, as a consequence of doing that. And he read my first book, and he's like, man, this just makes sense. And he's not religious about it. He has a little bit of, he'll have a cocktail here and there. He'll have a little dark chocolate here and there, but he mainly like protein and veggies. Like that's what he does. And at 72, he's a good looking man. He's good. It's the same deal, like upright posture. He's not stooped over, 6 foot tall, handsome dude. And he can work me to death. Like when we lay tile or put in paver stones or whatever, he will beat me down. Like I have to really mentally rally to hang with this guy because he has no off switch. Like he just goes and goes and goes. And his dad lived to 80 and was in still pretty good shape, but he ended up dying from some complications from prostate cancer. And what's interesting about Gary is he had started having some prostatitis and some issues. And then when he started eating a lower carb diet, the prostate issues largely resolved. And so there's a strong genetic component with prostate cancer, but there's also this epigenetic, this environmental trigger of elevated insulin levels, chronically elevated insulin. And that maybe being one of the precipitating elements to breast, colon, prostate cancer as some of the biggies. So it's fascinating what the and here's just a quick aside. If you haven't been active, if you haven't taken care of yourself, but you're in that kind of like late middle age scene, late middle age scene, it's almost like getting a get out of jail free card, because if you get your shit together now, it for the rest of your life and you maintain it, it's almost better than if you had been in shape your whole life, because you don't have the orthopedic issues. You didn't do all the knuckleheaded stuff, of like hurting your back, tweaking your knees, doing youth athletics and all this type of stuff. But you can be as healthy and as strong and as vibrant as if you had trained your whole life if you just sneak in at the halfway point. But you just have to fucking do it. Like, there comes a time where the stopwatch is speeding up and the decline is speeding up, as it relates to physicality, our muscle mass, our cardiovascular system and everything. But if you jump in, it doesn't need to be a crazy thing. 2 or 3 days a week of a full body strength training program that takes you 20 minutes to go through the whole thing. A couple of days a week of some sort of zone 2 cardio, where you're hard pressed to continue breathing through your nose only, like you're right on the edge of needing to start breathing through your mouth a little bit. You do that 20 or 30 minutes, ideally as many days a week as you can figure out a way to do that, but it can be a variety of different activities. The likelihood of you making it into advanced age and having your cognitive facilities with you, and then just having like a 2-week illness and then dying is highly likely, versus like a 30-year decline where you're losing all this capacity and you have this chronic, degenerative disease state. My dad, I ended up doing diabetic wound care on him for the last 15 years of his life. And we took off his big toe and then part of his foot and then all of his foot and then below the knee amputation. And then it was like a hand and this and that. And they just kept whittling parts off of him. And his quality of life was terrible. And then for the people around him, it sucked because you just saw this literally whittling away of this person.
When you talk about people must be listening to this saying, oh, well, when should I start? Like today, right? Or tomorrow. And we're in December now, right? So we're recording this as December 2022, day 1 of December. And people are getting to that point. I actually had a guy in here last week. Earlier this week. No, last week. And he said, well, these are the months that I really kind of like forego my healthy living. And we're all guilty of it, right? We always eat a little more pie for we're in Jersey. So we have some more cannolis, some more tiramisu. But the reality is everybody's got this mindset that they're going to get into fucking being healthy January 1. January 1, that's when I'll start. But why? Why not just start tomorrow, right? You know what? You want to do your last day? Great. But start tomorrow. You know what I mean? What's your thoughts on that?
A couple of things with that. One of them is that perfection ends up being the reason why people quit. Like they assume or they create it, and they do it on purpose, whether they realize it or not. They'll be motoring along. They're tight on their program, whether it's the exercise and or the diet, and then they miss a workout or they one thing that's off the meal plan, and they're like, "Fuck it, I'm done." Like I screwed it all up, and they pull the ripcord and they're totally done. When the reality is that they're only one meal away from being back on track, and
right.
That perfectionism is what guarantees failure. So that's a piece of it. And then the other side of this is, it takes about a month to entrain some habits to just get used to doing this new thing, whether it's going to the gym, going to jujitsu, having an Airdyne in your, in this day and age, if you've got a garage and you've got like an exercise bike and you can stick a nice TV in front of that, and there's really good stuff to watch, it's like Stranger Things and Yellowstone and all this stuff. Watch a TV show while you do your cardio or you lift your weights or whatever, I mean, there are little things that you can do with that where it's not so isolated, not so boring, but you just have to figure out something to do. And what I love it when people do some strength training. I love it when people do some dedicated cardio. If you hate that stuff, that's fine, but just find something that you like that you will stick to. And this is, for good or ill, this is one of the great things about CrossFit because it's got that community element to it, and people, they get to know your name. You have some accountability. You actually feel good about the community, being part of the community and both receiving and offering support there. There was just this, landmark study that the number one hallmark of happiness is the significance of community that we have in our lives, which is, shouldn't be shocking at all. And so, figure out some strategy for why you're going to move your body and why you're going to eat a little bit better. And on that eating better side, if people will just focus on making sure that every meal has like a palm and a half size hunk of protein, just make that happen. And then everything else will kind of sort itself out. It is so clear in the literature and in coaching people for the last 25 years nearly. When people undereat protein, it is super easy to overeat everything else in our lives. And the reason for that is protein is just highly satiating. It sends a signal to the brain that we're good. We can kind of, pump the brakes on what we're eating. And if we don't hit that protein minimum, which a gram of protein per pound of lean body weight up to a gram of protein per pound of body weight, or like ideal body weight. So like I'm 160 pounds, 165 pounds. So anywhere from 140 to 170 pounds of protein a day. If I hit that, it is dead simple for me to not overeat everything else. If I'm under on that significantly, I just get munchy and I want to snack between meals. And this is where I start making dodgier food choices. So like, even if you're out at the holidays and you want the cannolis or you want the piece of pie or whatever, just I with my kids, I do this speed bump method where I have them eat protein first. And I'm just like, please, just have the hunk of protein first and then eat whatever you want to eat. And we've kind of ingrained that in them. Like it's pretty much a habit at this point. And what's fascinating is we have ice cream in the refrigerator. We have some like cookies. We have some different things. Some of them are kind of no carb. Some of them are regular stuff. And what's really interesting is I don't need to, and I don't police any of that with my kids. All that I police is like, hey, eat your protein, kiddo. And both girls will eat their protein. They'll get on that. And then they'll go scoop themselves a reasonable serving of ice cream and they're done. They put the bowl in the sink and they're totally done. But what I've noticed is if they skimp on the protein, and I've kind of let them do it a couple of times just to observe it, then it's like 3 servings of ice cream instead of the 1 serving, because it's just that neuroregulation of appetite and sending the off signal to our brain. And protein is really powerful for doing that. So I know I'm kind of bouncing around here, but on the physical movement side, try to find something you like, or even if you don't love it, just kind of find a reason why you're going to do it. Your kids, your grandkids. For people in law enforcement, I used to have this horse and pony thing that I did for both military, but also police in particular. And I opened the thing up with the following statistic. The average lifespan of people in law enforcement is about 58 years old. This is nearly 20 years shorter than the average lifespan out in the general population. And that pisses me off. And my goal was to make sure that all of you folks who have served your community and sacrificed so much that you get every goddamn thing coming to you that you deserve at this point in your life, So what ends up happening is people retire and then they die in a couple of years. And I think that that's an absolute travesty. And so find some reason, and if it's just like, I'm going to get as many years out of my pension as I can, like whatever the reason is, but find a reason to do the movement, find a reason to tweak the nutrition. And the nutrition doesn't need to be crazy over the top stuff. Like if you just focus on protein first, and then we need to think a little bit about like how processed the food is and how much junky crap we have in our house. We're not designed for self-control. Like we just don't do well with using self-control as a mediator. And so by and large, over the course of time, if people have less and less junky stuff in the house, that makes life easier. You find some alternatives. If you really want a piece of cake or a piece of pie or ice cream, go out and eat it and don't have it at home, ideally, stuff like that. But there's some simple things that you can do that are not so staggeringly life-changing, but will add up over time. And then you may find that a year, 2 years down the road, you're on a ketogenic diet, all these gut issues you've had have resolved, your sleep is awesome, you feel amazing. And when you go off rails, you feel so bad, you're like, that just isn't worth it. I so enjoy feeling good that you're more inclined to stay on the tack. And that's the reason why I have been relatively good at staying on my program, because I literally almost died. Like I was in the hospital, ready to have a bowel resection. They weren't, and the outcome with that stuff is not great. You're on immunosuppressant drugs your whole life, which is not good. And so the fact I was able to regain my health as much as I have, I'm just like, I'm not going to play with that stuff. I'm not going to play with the foods that give me problems. So I have a really powerful why that keeps me in the straight and narrow. Folks need to find a why. They need to find a reason to just get in and start doing this. But at the same time, you don't have to be all 100% in. If you're an all-in type of person, that's great, but just don't set it up again with that perfectionism being the reason why you give up when you have one meal off of plan at some point.
And life goes quick. I'm 41 now. I turned 41 a couple of days ago, and it's wild. But the good news is I don't feel like I'm 41. I think biologically, and I know I say this often, I feel like about 28, 29. I really do.
You look like early 30s. Yeah, you look like early 30s.
Thank you, sir. I wasn't even fishing for a compliment there, but I appreciate it. And the point I'm making on this is I take a real recognition that life is short and you're going to trade off a lot of good years. And people think that, they're not having good years from 70 on. I have an uncle who was at Thanksgiving last week with us. He's 98, going on 99. Got a badass brand new fucking Toyota Camry outside with black rims. Like it's like legit. I'm like, this motherfucker's got a badass. He's gonna be 99 years old. D-Day Normandy. And now he's a freak of nature. He also smoked for like 70 something years. It was wild. And he's still here. The doctors are like, They just don't understand how he has the lungs of a 37-year-old.
They were made tougher.
Yeah. So, but my point is like, he's the only one left, and he's been the only one left for probably 14 years. Everybody left about 14 years ago in his age category, between 14 and 12 and 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And he got to experience so much more because of, and let's just take out aside his, I don't think he has healthy habits, but he looks good. I think there's a lot of genetics to play there, but you know, what are you trading off? You want to be 65 and be checked out of this game? I mean, you got people 60, you got my uncle's 98. He's still doing plumbing repairs at his house. He's independent. He doesn't need anybody. He drives family members of mine who are 20, 30 years younger than him to doctors.
That's
because
awesome.
they have lost mobility, or they're not because of the misbehavior. So, you know, it comes up fast, guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the resilience all the way around is shocking. And, you know, when we were running our CrossFit gym ages ago, we had this guy, Dr. Vogel, and I'm not even sure if he's still around. He was in his 80s back in the early 2000s, but he had a pull-up bar and a dip stand in his eye clinic. And every time he went through a doorway, he knocked out a couple of pull-ups and a couple of dips. And and I think he did lunges around the office. This is just something he started doing in like his 50s. And so he came in he was like 80, 81 when he started training with us. And, you know, I was going to start him off on like some body rows, and he's like, I can do pull-ups. I'm like, no shit, really? Okay, well, let's see what you got. And he knocked out like 12 of them, like nice, like military grade, you know, full extension, chin over the bar and everything. And, it was just, and he had always eaten reasonably. Like it wasn't like super geeked out paleo or vegan or anything. It was just, you know, some pretty reasonable eating. He'd have a dessert here and there, but a few cocktails, but nothing super over the top one way or the other. But he had just baked in the cake some physical movement. And this guy, again, looked like a different species at 80. And his enjoyment and experience of life was seemingly so much better, you know, because it's like he could just do whatever he wanted to do. He still went hunting. He still went fishing. He had grandkids, you know, that were now starting to have their kids. So he was going to get to know great grandchildren and stuff like that.
You don't understand how amazing this shit is.
And how important it is for the people, for the legacy that you're leaving, to be there for your kids, to be there for your grandkids and all that stuff. You know, it's so incredible, and to not be that burden on the family. You know, I mean, dying and that whole process is generally not a great thing. But if you just go quickly in the night, or you have a 2-week decline, which is oftentimes the way that these, you know, centenarians, the people that live to be 100 years old, the way they usually go is like they get a cold or they get a flu or something, and they're sick for 2 weeks, and then they succumb to it, which isn't the worst way to go. And typically they're very, very fit and healthy and functional up until that final event. So I guess it really just, and you can still watch some of your TV. Just do it while you're pedaling a treadmill or working out on an Airdyne or something like that. You know, like it doesn't mean you have to give up all this stuff, but we just kind of need to add in some other good habits to augment everything else that we're up to.
It's funny. You talk about, I do just the opposite. So I really try to make physical fitness a top priority of mine. And I had somebody recently, he's like, oh, I'd love to come over and work out with you. And I'm like, do you realize I listen to like audiobooks while I'm working out? People come to my house sometimes, like people are like, yo, can I come check out the gym? Can we get a session in? I'm like, especially like people in my town, when I meet kids' fathers who are obviously in really good shape. And I'm like, yeah, you should come check out my gym. They're like, oh, I'd love to. And then like the mothers are like, I saw the gym. I knew as soon as you met my husband, he's going to want to come over. And, you know, people come over and I'm like, you ready to go? And they're like, yeah, like putting on some kind of like thoughtful audiobooks,
right?
You know, like really, really spoken by some very soft-spoken man, right? Typically, as most of them are, right? And they're just like, where's like the Metallica or like the club music? I'm like, nah, I'm doing mind and body right now, brother. This is my fucking dojo. And
yeah.
And my performance, my ability to, during those moments, I don't know, kind of meta state that I'm in, most people here know when I'm working out, because the entire staff here starts getting texts at like 6:05 in the morning of like ideas. I'm like, you don't need to respond to this, but I just have a lot of ideas and I want to get them out into the universe. And that's where all that magical stuff happens. So we talk about those other, like the mental effects that it has, especially for anybody who's trying to, Jesus, you don't have to be an entrepreneur or try to grow a company. I mean, just see clearly. You could probably have better relationships with the people in your life that you love from that, because you're going to be such a better place. But I do want to say something before we move on to the next thing. You know, as you're talking, I saw a TikTok clip the other day of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I just Googled it to see if I could find it. And I don't want to just pop it on because then we'll have to edit the podcast. I don't know if I have the right one here, but the first thing it says is insider.com. Arnold Schwarzenegger, 74, works out an hour and a half a day, every day. Now, what he said in this video clip, they were like, you know, why are you still working out? He's like, I'll never stop working out. He talked about, like, I need that pump. I something about that does something to me. Now, he was a professional bodybuilder, obviously doing probably 6 to 8 hours a day in the gym, which is a very, very hard thing to do. But that was his job.
Right.
You had to build to that. It is a great story. Schwarzenegger is, like, literally, once you start to know who these people are and what they were about, he's one of the most fascinating people that you'll ever meet in your life, or hear about, or read about, or learn about in your life. But it was so interesting to see how he views himself still at the gym, doing heavy weights, hour and a half a day, 7 days a week. And then, like, you know, it is holiday season. I will see people that I know, people who I'm related to, and I'll go, what a significant difference in how he sees the world versus how you see the world, how most people see the world. You know, and think about this guy, how this guy's living his life at 74, right? Still at the gym, still hanging out. It's wild shit. But outside of the things that we've addressed already, what are other things? Let's move into, like, when we talk about exercising and eating right a little bit. And I don't want to make it so bland, because you do a really good job of starting to get into the nitty gritty of the health benefits of it. But let's talk about some of the mental cognitive benefits of it. What it does to avoid terminal diseases, not even just the ones that we're the most scared of, right? You're the most scared of cancer, but, like, what about, like, Alzheimer's? Is there a correlation to things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's different flavors of Alzheimer's, but in general, Alzheimer's is called type 3 diabetes. It's diabetes of the brain. It's where the brain itself has become insulin resistant. And what ends up happening mechanistically is the neurons end up in this energy crisis, that you can't get glucose into the brain. The person is insulin resistant, so they can't use ketones as a fuel source. They don't make ketones, and the brain dies. And and there's the amyloid plaque buildup and different things like that. There's other stuff going on there too, but there's a crystal clear relationship between poor metabolic health and these cognitive decline scenarios. And, you know, like, dying from cancer definitely is terrible. I've had friends that have died of cancer and have battled through cancer. It's terrible, but, like, losing one's cognitive faculties, I think, might be even worse, possibly. Like, it's just so impactful on the family, the people around you, having to deal with that decline. It seems pretty terrifying for the individual that's experiencing it also. This is what's so fascinating about the effect of just some decent diet, and in particular exercise. So, like, if people are like, I'm not going to change my diet, then it's like, okay, at least get in and exercise. Like, do some cardio, do some strength training. And it's almost like you can't do too much of that. You need a little periodization. You need to be smart about it, you know, and all that type of stuff. But there's a dose response curve where the more exercise you do, generally, the longer you live, the better your life is, you know, just on and on and on. There was a review paper that was about 9 years ago, that suggested that fewer than 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy, where they're not insulin resistant. They're not, you know, heading towards diabetes and heart disease and neurodegenerative disease. Post-pandemic, that number is now 7%. Wow. Literally almost nobody is healthy. And the impact this is going to have on society at large is just staggering. Like, the people who really understand this, they're, like, losing their minds. So just the diabetes related costs with this stuff. The Congressional Budget Office back in 2004 projected that by 2035, the U.S. would be bankrupt from diabetes related costs alone. I think the pandemic, like, accelerated that. But the neurodegenerative disease costs are orders of magnitude greater, because With diabetes, we can give you insulin, we can give you glucophage, we can do these things that kicks the can down the road. And we can give you a pill, we can give you a potion, and you go home, and or maybe we cut a foot off, or we do this or we do that. We put you on dialysis when your kidneys start failing. When you start losing your mind, you need 24/7 nursing care. There are not enough people to administer the nursing care. The cost of this 24/7 nursing care is astronomical. And every single day, I want to say there's like 10,000 people that are retiring, that are hitting that 65, 69-year-old, range. So there's this massive uptick of people that are going into this advanced age scene, and they have very poor health. And it's going to be nightmarish to deal with this over the upcoming years. And just for people, I'm a huge fan of technology. I'm a huge fan of innovation and all that stuff. I think it's amazing. But chronic degenerative disease is so difficult to deal with. Like, big pharma abandoned its Alzheimer's drug research about 2 years ago. I don't know if people remember this. There were all these headlines where it's like Pfizer abandons Alzheimer's drug because none of this stuff works, because there are so many different things that go into the degenerative process that a single pill trying to address this is never going to work. Like, it's just not. Whereas, interestingly, though, exercise, because it does a million different things, it changes our genetic profile in these just amazing ways and on so many different levels. But we're never going to get exercise in a pill. We're never going to get good diet in a pill. So at some point, folks have to make a decision around what the vector is. And there's no guarantee. Like, it's not 100% guarantee that if you change your diet, change your lifestyle, that there's going to be a 100% favorable outcome. But it is 100% guarantee that you're going to have unfavorable outcomes if you don't do it. And to some degree, you're going to forestall these processes. It's kind of like betting on an early stage startup. It doesn't always exit as a unicorn, like an Amazon or something like that. But at a minimum, the fact that you're investing in this stuff early, you have a greater likelihood of favorable return on investment. And I just, I guess it's one of those things, like when people really understand law enforcement and things like that, like they oftentimes are pretty nervous because they're like, damn, it's a dangerous world out there. And when you really understand the health implications and you see people living the way that they do, it's like, God damn, like you really don't get like what you're in for, and how much this is going to suck. But yeah.
That's that theory of like, do you want to be in the doctor's office 1 hour a day when you're in your 70s, or you want to be in the gym 1 hour a day now?
Right.
And I'll take listen, I'm just in control of my own life. And it's interesting. I even catch myself again. I'm not the most disciplined person. I try to put thought into it. I was on the road doing a lot of work in the field for about 5 or 6 weeks. And I recognized going into that I would not be on my regimen because I just couldn't be, but I'm going to do my best to try to keep up with it. And I've slipped and I've fallen, and I'm actually getting back on it now in the last couple of weeks, which I'm happy about. Even today, I was running a little late, and I told Frankie on the way here when I called him, I said, I wasn't willing to forfeit the 40-minute workout this morning before I got here, just because I know the rest of my day is going to be just a better day because of it.
Yep.
But, I often say to myself, when I'm looking at something on a choice, right? It's the holiday seasons. I've actually told our instructors, we have like 40 plus instructors at this time in this company's history. Now it's Christmas. Everybody wants to buy shit for us and send it here. And they send it here and believe me, I've appreciated it so much, but people start sending us gifts, and they're sending food, and they're sending tons of it. And we're in Jersey, so that they're getting these cannolis and these pastries, and they're coming here. And I even find myself going in and looking at something and saying, why is it so hard? Or why do people find it so hard to just say, no, I'm not going to put that in my mouth? Or you think about how simple it is to say, no, I'm not going to put that in my mouth. I mean, it's, you know what? You got a problem going to the gym. Now you go down that road. Let's talk about when you look at something, how do you say, now there are times, Rob, where I don't have a choice. I've been at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. I haven't eaten for fucking 9 hours. I've got a 2-hour plane ride home. I also get something called, and they're very infrequent. When I learned about them, I don't even go near them, but I get hemiplegic migraines. Yeah, it's very interesting. The first time so they mimic actual stroke symptoms.
Yeah.
It's
The
pretty
TIA
wild
symptoms.
stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, I like, when it first happened, my son was, since like 8 years ago. I remember my wife saying to me, she's like, you got to go to the hospital. I'm like, and I mean, I couldn't remember people's names. It was bad.
Yeah.
And then I read into it. I'm like, wow, this is exactly who I am. And I've had two more since then, one at but again, I know that not eating will trigger it. So I have to have that variable of, fuck, this is the only place that's open. But I will tell you this also, in the same stroke, I was at Chicago again 2 weeks ago. I was fucking hungry. It was like 6:45. I made it to the airport. Oh, I saw Charlie's cheesesteaks. You ever Charlie cheesesteaks? Fucking so good. And I saw so many things, like a Five Guys. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I saw Salad Works. And I just said to myself, you know what? Don't be a piece of shit. Just go get in the line at Salad Works. And I did. And you know what? That Salad Works, that airport, it fucking sucked. But I still was thankful that I ate lettuce. Yeah. And and just some other fresh things that they had, as fresh as it may have been. But it was certainly better than grabbing Charlie's cheesesteaks. And, the line for Salad Works was not even as close to as long as the Charlie cheesesteaks line. But that's like that discipline of like making that mental decision of like, you know what? I'm just going to go with this. And I'm going to commit to spending $16 on the salad. And that's that.
Let me throw a couple of things out there. And remind me if I don't remember to tell the story about peanut M&Ms. If I get totally,
okay, I'm gonna write it down for you. Don't worry. So I have ADD. You see the fucking pad here?
Yeah.
I write things down and I come back to them.
So I launched into this thing with make little decisions, don't go over the top, blah blah blah. Now I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to be like, maybe this is a case, your scenario, to tighten things up and to be more in like that ketogenic low carb deal, because those hemiplegic migraines and things like that are really blood sugar dependent. And my goodness, if we get people eating a lower carb diet generally, what we find, like when I did my work for Naval Special Warfare, I would speak at the pre and post deployment events. And the main feedback that I got from the guys doing this was that when they tweaked their diet and they weren't keto, but instead of being like 600 grams of carbs a day, they were like 200 grams of carbs. And then they would try to fill in the calories, the missing calories more with like nuts and monounsaturated fat. And the feedback I got time and again was that instead of people ending up in these blood sugar roller coasters where they would end up in a hypoglycemic state and shaky, poor cognition, poor fine motor skill and everything, that when they ate just on the lower carb side of things, that they had like rock solid cognition, rock solid energy. Those migraine type events just disappeared. And so this is maybe a case for someone like you to eat on that lower carb side of things. And that's where like the Philly cheesesteak, the Five Guys, you go in, you get the burger without a bun, or you get half the bun. Don't do the fries. Diet drink instead of a sugar drink.
Water. Let's do the water. Do the water instead of the diet
water.
drink.
Yeah. If you want to, but it's like that could be a way that a burger without a bun is pretty good. It's not great. This is one of the challenging things of these mixed meals. Pizza, ice cream. It's fat, it's carbs, it's protein. What do we like? People have probably had a vegan pizza at some time and they're like, it's okay, but it's not great. People have probably had a low carb pizza at one time. It's okay, it's not great, because all of these things are pulling usually the fat and the carbs separated. It's when we stick all those things together that we have like the most amazing, stuff that's really hard to say no to, which that discipline thing. And this is where the peanut M&M story comes in. They did this really elegant study where they had folks with basically unlimited access to peanut M&Ms, but the peanut M&Ms were placed in 3 different locations depending on the folks. One of them, it was literally right on their desktop. So like you've got a glass of water there, right next to your glass of water would be a bowl of peanut M&Ms. The other people, they had a drawer that they had to scoot their chair out, open the drawer, reach into the bowl of peanut M&Ms to get them, and then close the drawer and get back to work. And the third scenario was that there was a bowl of peanut M&Ms across the office. So if people wanted them, they had to walk across the office, but everybody knew what was there and why people were going there. And so there was the potential for like social hazing and all this type of stuff. The consumption of these M&Ms was 50% less putting them in the drawer versus on the tabletop. Just the act of scooting the chair out and reaching into the drawer and then sitting up and going back, cut consumption in half versus having it right immediately at hand. And it cut it by like 80 or 90% walking across the office, because you had to get up, go over there. People give the people shit for going to get their handful of peanut M&Ms. So there is like, I throw that out there just so it's almost like a form of self-defense. Like, people will go on and on about like self-defense and like knife tactics and this tactic and that tactic. But like, if you don't shut down biker bars and you're not there till 2:30 in the morning, hanging out in the parking lot, the likelihood of you ending up in some sort of a physical altercation is really low. Like, I'm in bed by 9:00 most nights. I'm not getting in a fight anymore. Like, I still keep my eyes open. I'm still aware in like parking lot scenarios and stuff like that. But like, I'm just not placing myself in scenarios where there's a high likelihood of me having a physical altercation. So similarly, like, our world is built, our food world is built around foods engineered to be hyper palatable, to be so tasty that we can't say no. What's the Lay's potato chip tagline? Bet you can't eat just one, because they know it. Like, they'll win that bet all day long. And so this is some of the stuff where you, instead of bemoaning the fact that like these really tasty foods are challenging, they are. So you need a strategy for how to deal with that. And a lot of times that means not having it in the house. Like, if people are sending, these amazing things to your workplace, maybe you keep some of them, but a bunch of them end up going to the food bank or something like that. Like, there's just that proximity is almost impossible to win. Like, it's just, this is going to be a really gauche example, but I'm going to throw it out there. Like, I worked for CrossFit early in the early days. And there was a tendency, after you would finish the certification, everybody would go out and get some drinks and get some food. And once everybody's drinking and everybody's in good shape and they generally eat pretty well, people get frisky and all kinds of crazy shit would happen after that. When I got done with the seminar, I went back to my hotel room, ordered food in, and called my wife and talked to her on the phone, because my wife's Italian. And if I cheated on her, she would murder me in ways that would make Tony Soprano like blush, Yes. So I didn't put myself in the easy scenario of being an authority figure in front of people that I'm attracted to and they're possibly attracted to me, and we both are liquored up a little bit and we're making shitty decisions. And this is kind of the same deal with food and whatnot. Like, we know what the draw is. So you just have to go into that armed with some information. And so again, like, you already made a good decision for you with like the salad works versus the other options. But even the other options, I could make a case that I can generally construct an acceptable meal out of almost anywhere. A Dairy Queen, a McDonald's, like, I'll get the burger without the bun. I'll get
no cheese, no processed cheese.
I don't care about that. Like, I'm fine. Like, so long as you don't have a dairy intolerance or something like that. Like, I'm not the guy that's weirded out about seed oils, when you're traveling, because it's like, your house is burning down. This is where the fitness community makes me kind of crazy. The house is burning down. People are metabolically broken, but they're worried. But the fitness people are worried about the sink that is dripping, which is like seed oils, and whether or not the cheese was, milked by the Dalai Lama and is raw milk versus like American, it's like, that doesn't matter. The fact that you didn't drink the soda, ate either no bun or half the bun, didn't eat the French fries, didn't have the dessert, that's the win. And worrying about the processed cheese and the potential like canola oil that was on the griddle when they fried your burgers, that's the dripping faucet. Like, that is the stuff that people get so overwhelmed with, all those picky-ish details, that they're like, fuck it, I'm out. Like, I can't deal with any of this stuff. And the perfectionism that, again, comes around. And there are people that have health concerns that they need to be really, really careful. Like, I am celiac. I'm very gluten intolerant. So if I went to the Five Guys deal, I'd be like, hey, can you guys cook my burger in a separate pan? I have celiac disease. They're like, sure, no problem. Most places will do that now. So even for me, I'm kind of like the unique snowflake. I have some accommodations that need to be met, but I can go into a McDonald's, I can go into a Five Guys, and I can usually cobble something together so that shitty meal that I've got in the airport when I'm dashing from one spot to another, it's still better than what it could have been. And so there's always ways to accommodate that. And I think just recognizing, like acknowledging, if we're relying on self-control, on self-discipline, it's almost a guarantee for failure. And like, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a first responder, if you're a parent, and if you're all of those things, like, you have hit decision fatigue by the time it's 9 a.m. You have made so many decisions that everything else needs to be scripted and algorithmically driven. You need to know where you're getting your food. You need to know what the parameters are of that so that you don't make a decision. But it needs to be already said, okay, when I'm in Chicago, I'm going to go to Five Guys. I'm going to get this like triple stack burger. It's going to have cheese. I'm going to get an iced tea, put some stevia in it for a sweetener. And this is your jam. This is your plan. This is what you do. There's no decision. The decision's already been made, because when you're standing there and you're like, maybe I'll just get the fries this time. And they've got this like chocolate cheesecake over on the side. My God, it looks good, And it so you have to already pre-plan some of that stuff, because if we rely on self-control, we're done. When I was doing the horse and pony show for CrossFit, if I had gone out and did my drinking and stayed up late, and I'm around a bunch of attractive young women, and I would have got myself in trouble. And I saw a lot of people do it, because they didn't recognize the parameters of the world that they were operating in. And so you've just got to recognize when, how to put that bowl of peanut M&Ms in your neighbor's closet. You got to go knock on the door and be like, hey man, can I get a handful of those things, and make it really difficult to screw that thing up.
We are around the holidays, like I've said, and I guess some of this conversation, the first time we're talking here, recently at my house, we had Friendsgiving for my children and their friends, and everybody brought platters over. Like, they did like a charcuterie board, but anything you wanted to put on it. So, it's Jersey, it's very Italian, so everything's in abundance. And as that party ended and I was cleaning up, people were like, what do you want to do with this? And I'm like, it's all going in the trash. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, first of all, I knew everybody's going to bring way too much fucking food. Second of all, I don't want any of that stuff around here. And it happened a week later at Thanksgiving. Came home, I got set up with stuff, whatever left over at my aunt's house. Came home, and here's pies. And I just literally, and in this moment of clarity, right, where I wasn't weak, it wasn't after I drank, or it wasn't late at night where I was hungry and trying to fight that hunger while going to sleep. I just literally took everything and threw it all the fuck out. That's it. Just got rid of it. I just get rid of it. I see it. I'm like, and the stuff my kids eat, I don't like candies and shit, because of my hemiplegic migraines, I'm very sensitive to sugar. You will actually never see me. The thought of me putting Skittles in my mouth, knowing what's going to happen next. I mean, I could eat a half of a piece of chocolate cake right now. I don't know. It's 12 o'clock on the East Coast. I will be it'll wreck my day. I'll be in a complete headache state on the ground. Now, it's a blessing to me. If I go out to a nice dinner, I will always have chocolate mousse, but I try to counter that. I don't know if this makes any sense to you with like an espresso. So I think that, does that make sense?
Mechanistically, it makes sense. Yeah. And it's interesting because these migraines can be both from vasoconstriction and also vasodilation in the brain, and the blood sugar swings are a big factor in that. But somehow probably what's happening is you're getting some vasodilation from the sugar, and then that espresso is probably providing a little bit of vasoconstriction. Yeah, I mean, it makes
I really
sense.
Can't have I can't have one without the other. Or I can have wine with it too. If I have like red wine with like a dessert. And again, I'm not sitting there fucking shoveling ice cream and tartufo down my fucking face nonstop. But I might only have a bite or two. You know, I work a lot. I can afford to spend $11 on a mousse parfait to try it a little bit and then be done with it. You know.
Well, my wife and I will split desserts all the time. And we always have an espresso with it. And We've usually done either jujitsu, some weights, or some cardio earlier in the day. We usually, after the dinner, make a little bit of an effort to take a walk, whether, above and beyond just going back to the car. So we do a little bit of like mitigating stuff like that. But, unless you're at like the Olive Garden or something and like a single serving of pie is like a whole goddamn pie.
I'm just usually interrupt you there for a second, Rob. I'm in New Jersey. The Olive Garden is like going to the Antichrist's home.
I get it. I get it.
I've never actually eaten, my hand to God, at an Olive Garden or a macaroni grill in my entire life.
I don't think I have either.
Anyway,
right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you. Let's go back to your wife, and you were splitting things after jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing big there, but it's again, this is an example. Like I generally eat a pretty low carb diet, but if they have like a flourless chocolate torte or something like that on the menu, we'll get it, we'll split it, we're good to go. Like we get to kick our heels up and have this like really amazing experience. But I walk out of the meal not like totally bloated. I don't feel wretched and horrible. If we each every once in a while, and this was more in the past, like we would each have one. And we'd feel like shit afterwards. It's like, God, that was too much. And then my wife, being smarter than I am, she was like, why don't we just split one? Great idea, and because out of my old powerlifting days, it's like there wasn't enough food that I could ever eat. And I'm not a powerlifter anymore. And I don't have that degree of work output. And so, splitting a dessert with my wife is great. We get to have that experience of that event, have a nice time, but then I'm not, it's just, I have enough. I don't have more than enough. And then I'm feeling terrible afterwards.
How about 3 changes that people can make today? And we'll finish with this because I don't want to take up any more of your time. And if you're okay with it, we'll do it again because I think you're, I was literally sitting here going, this guy's fucking great. I just love, like,
thank you.
For me, there might be a little selfishness to it too, because I really find this stuff fascinating. And I really think it should be implemented in education.
Well, the 3, I think, big things, sleep. I'm going to throw 4 out there. I'll just to
I'll take 4.
Because it's kind of out of the 4 pillars of my book. Sleep, like try to go to bed earlier. I have and we can get this in the show notes, but I have a whole 15-page guide on sleep hygiene and how to improve sleep.
Send it over. I'll put it on all our social platforms. You have a big following.
Perfect.
I know you do as well. We'll put it everywhere.
And I have a special section for people that are shift work. So like police, military, fire, new parents,
we'll share it for you. We'll tag you in it. We'll credit you.
Yeah. So figure out a way to improve your sleep. And if you're a shift worker, like double dog down on that. Like get some blue blockers to wear at the appropriate time so it helps you sleep. Use some melatonin to improve your sleep if you need to. Figure out what type of foods mess with your sleep. Like if you're waking up in the middle of the night hungry, maybe you're having kind of a hypoglycemic event. Maybe you need to eat a little bit fewer carbs so that we don't end up on a blood sugar roller coaster. But that sleep guide is really solid and very accessible. I wrote it for casino workers for a Native American nation. So it's written absolutely for the layperson, but it has all the goods in it. But
where can they find that right now? If it's before we post it, where can they find it right now?
I'm not totally sure. I think it's robbwolf.com/sleep, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But we'll make sure to get it to folks.
Okay.
Then on diet, again, circling back to that protein topic, try to make sure to get 3 meals a day, 3 meals and a snack. Each one of these meals has a palm and a half size hunk of protein that's real protein, chicken, fish, beef, all that stuff. If you're concerned about cholesterol and destroying the planet because, cows belching methane are going to destroy the planet, I have a book that you can see over my shoulder called Sacred Cow, and I have a film with the same title. If you're concerned about the health and environmental and ethical considerations of animal products in our food system, please give that a look. Like it's outside the scope to talk about it right this minute, but like focus on that kind of protein centric approach, because if you undereat protein, I guarantee you will overeat everything else. And then movement, like we got to find some things that we enjoy on the movement side, at exercise. I would love to see people do a couple of days a week of resistance training, couple of days a week of classic cardio. If you just hate that, try to do jujitsu, try to do yoga, try to do, whatever it is that you like is better than not doing anything. But man, the return on investment of a little bit of strength training, a little bit of cardio is just amazing. Like it's just absolutely amazing. And then finally, this community piece. And this is where stuff like CrossFit and jujitsu and yoga and things like that are so powerful. People who have adequate social connections are as the difference between adequate social connections and being lonely basically is as impactful on your health as a pack-a-day smoking habit. So this is where I love things like jujitsu or CrossFit. Like you go into a CrossFit gym, you're going to get a workout. If it's a good coach, they'll talk to you about your sleep and your food. And you've got the community baked in the cake there. Like people care about you, you care about them. You go back because there's this accountability and everything. You can get similar things with martial arts and yoga and stuff like that. But that's where I do really enjoy like that community-based fitness approach, because we are time pressured and we are time crunched. And so if you can get a workout, talk to people about what's going on in your life, get some connectivity and get some movement in all at the same time, like it's very time efficient. So I like all that stuff. So get sleep dialed in, focus on protein, find some movement that you like. And then, think about these community-based activities. And a lot of people are like, I don't need community. You do. Like we're humans. We're social animals. Maybe you're a different duck and you need to be really selective about who you hang out with. Fine, but just find your tribe and figure out how to plug into it. And also I've really been working on trying to carve out time to be available for young entrepreneurs in my local area and just like at-risk youth that they need somebody to talk to. Like I came from a pretty broken family and my dad spent most of his life incarcerated. My mom had bipolar through while I was growing up. I had a lot of really fortunate breaks, but I also had some pretty interesting challenges to overcome. And so I've been really trying to give back some of that story for people that were like me, that had some talent and some ambition, but maybe their family of origin wasn't going to be the nurturing environment to help them break out of that scene. And I tell you what, if you want to find some purpose in your life, find some people that your experience and knowledge and skill set and love can make a difference in their life. And all of a sudden you got a fucking reason for getting up in the morning and doing something. Like this is, outside of raising my own kids, this is the most gratifying work that I've ever done. It's a hell of a lot better than duking it out with vegan knuckleheads on the interwebs about, baking, giving you cancer, like this actually matters because I'm plugged into these kids' lives and trying to help them figure out what they're up to and just help them on a day-to-day basis. So that community piece, there is something for everybody that they could do with this. And it just, not to derail this thing, when my mom was in her later years, she ended up in a scenario where I begged her to go to the library. There were these programs where older folks could help kids learn to read, could help them do this, could help them do that. My mom had a scenario where there would have been state funded transportation to take her to and from these events. All this stuff was already there. And instead, my mom decided to just be home alone. And she spent the last 10 years of her life in an apartment alone. And it's gut wrenching to me because I can't imagine the loneliness that she had, but she just wouldn't take that first step of putting herself out there. And she was a really wonderful woman. She had a lot of life experience. Like she had 3 kids before me, and she had an abusive husband that she had to figure out how to escape from, and a really gnarly story. But she could have been an amazing force in a lot of kids' lives. And instead, she just sequestered herself in this apartment and was lonely and alone. And a lot of people end up doing that. And it's scary to put yourself out there that first time, especially if you've had trauma and you've been through a lot of things. And I know a lot of people in the first responder community, they experience a lot of really heavy stuff, but you can find some scenario to plug yourself back in and be again of service, but also get that nurturing that you need by giving. And when I see people do that, all this other stuff falls into place because you've got your purpose, you've got your why. I got to get up and I got to be functional, and I need to be able to go to the library to teach these kids how to read because nobody else is going to do it. There's a lot of shit like that we could do.
I'd like to do that on the next get together, is go into that, because I have an interesting similar story that I think it's probably time for me to share with the world, of the things that I grew up with and dealt with. And I think that people find benefit in that. And I agree. So I found a lot of camaraderie with you right there, because I know it. I know what you've been through, probably in a different kind of scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, tell us about the books, where we can find them, the website, the Instagram, the whole fucking nine. Tell us it all.
RobbWolf.com is where I mainly hang out, or you can find stuff on me. I have social media accounts, but I spend very, very little time on any of them. I do have a Substack, Robb Wolf, or robbwolf.substack.com, and I do some writing there. And then I do some writing for Element, the electrolyte company. But that's kind of the stuff. You can find my books over at my main website. And again, the animal product, like animals are going to destroy the environment thing, is it's a big deal right now. Like there's a lot of energy and focus on that. And I'm not a climate change denier, but I don't think that the way that we're being presented this information is actually, I have this crazy notion that when you have complex problems, you really need outstanding information and understanding to properly respond to the situation. And if your information is garbage, you're probably going to make really terrible decisions. And I think that the way that animal husbandry, animal products are portrayed in our food system is completely injurious. And it's antithetical to both health and a happy, healthy planet. And that sounds crazy, but that's why I wrote a book and did a movie trying to explain this stuff, because it's impossible to do in a Twitter thread to build this case. Like you got to go, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. You need a really cogent way to go through all that stuff. So if people are curious about that, Sacred Cow, like it's probably my most accessible book, even on the nutrition side. Like if you want a really good primer on how to eat well to have good performance, look good and everything, the Sacred Cow is probably better than my other two books, honestly.
It's good shit, dude. Well, listen, it's a pleasure meeting you, my brother, and happy holidays. And wonderful to meet people, even 10 years my senior, who've done wonderful things for the world. And I envy you. You are an example to many of us in the field of what's possible. So I appreciate you tremendously.
Huge honor. Thank you. Anytime you want me to bring down property values, I'd be honored to come back. So thank you.
Excellent. Guys, if you're in an area where you're trying to get to our classes, but we're not close to you, fret not. We actually have on-demand training at streetcop.com. You can take that course online right now, and then you could attend that training in the future at no additional cost. You can redeem your voucher, so you get two for the price of one. We don't want to deny you the ability to take this training now, especially knowing that it can keep you safe, at a very minimum, putting bad guys in jail where they belong, and at the maximum, going home to your family. Check out streetcop.com for that offer.